Here's what you get with this episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
You have to have a basic financial plan. I believe you have to have a financial advisor to do that. People that do it themselves, I don't think typically do all that well unless they're obsessed with it, in which case that becomes their sport, their hobby. So having a good financial plan. And then I think the second piece is having a basic legal structure in place that provides the basic protections that you can get with a legal plan.
The Nice Guys on Business are putting the band back together. They're on a mission from God. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
So Nice Guy community, Stan Miller has represented thousands of individuals and families in his estate planning career, which has spanned over 30 years. So he definitely knows what he's doing. He has also coached hundreds of estate planning attorneys in the techniques and strategies that empower them to deliver client-focused solutions in an understandable way. And you know me, I'm all about third grading it as much as we possibly can. And that's what we're going to do today. He believes that estate planners can bring wisdom and insight to the estate planning process and can fundamentally change the trajectory of a family for generations to come. I'm excited to chat with him today. Stan Miller, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Hey, great, Doug. Great to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. And I think part of the process is, you know, the intertwining between talking about the entrepreneurial experience and talking about how really things like estate planning and legacy and all that fit into play. So maybe we can back up just a quick second before we even get into the idea of what is legacy and what's estate planning. Maybe it's more of how do you fit into the world of an entrepreneur's, they're planning for what's coming down the road for them, maybe 10 years and maybe 50 years in some people's cases.
So in the work that I do, I get inside their lives and do the best I can to figure out what is it that really drives these guys? What is it that matters? You know, part of it is creating wealth. But I'm telling you that every human being, just about every entrepreneur that I've interacted with has a real passion for making a difference in the world. And when they reach a certain level of financial security, you start seeing that expressed. You see guys like Bill Gates, for example, doing just incredible things in the world. I saw it today. Some guy wrote a check for $1 billion to support the COVID-19 relief fund. And so at our heart, as human beings, I believe the way we are wired at the factory, the way we're built, we have an innate desire to make a difference in the world. And for most people, the way they see themselves doing that is through family, through their children, through their grandchildren, but also through community involvement and through doing charitable kinds of things. Some people express it politically. So there's no one way to do it, but there is that undeniable impulse that's built into human beings. And you see it particularly in times of crisis. You see people doing just incredible, amazing things coming together, in ways that are not definitively selfish.
So tell me about how legacy, that word legacy, and maybe we'll define that for just a moment, how legacy fits into the financial world, because legacy, doesn't it go just beyond dollars and cents? Does it go beyond that into some other things? So maybe just to help me define what legacy is, and then we can talk about the difference between legacy and, let's say, a financial path to the future.
Yeah, so that's why I wrote this book, because typically when people talk about their legacy, you're thinking about what's the stuff I'm going to leave, the portfolio or the financial asset I'm going to leave. And that is a part of it for sure. But my view has been for a long time that financial advisors and estate planning attorneys who live in the world that I live in have had too limited a view of what that is. And my goal here was to actually open the aperture on the conversation so that we were able to recognize that while legacy included the financial component, and while legacy included a legal component where you have a legal structure that protects your financial wealth, I felt for a long time like the conversation stopped too soon and did not give people the opportunity to open up to the non-financial aspects of the things that matter to them. And so for me, legacy actually wraps around and incorporates all three of those things.
It's interesting because as the more I was talking to my financial planner through the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years of, we doing the whole life insurance thing and helping me just kind of get things in the right order. And I went through a divorce, so making sure there's some protection there and making sure that my kids are taken care of and all of that. I really dealt a lot with the financial side. And I never realized that what he did wasn't really focused on, and I love him. He's a great guy. But what he doesn't do, I don't think, at least, or maybe I haven't uncovered this part of his process, is I think he does more financial planning and less estate planning. So maybe can you share that? Is there a difference between those two things?
There is, yeah, and that's been the frustration, is that we all live in our silos. We tend to do all day, every day, the things that get us paid, right? If you're a financial guy, it's about selling insurance products because that's how you get paid, or you get paid by assets under management. If you're a lawyer, you get paid for doing these legal documents. And so that's what we do when we get up every day. We got to pay the mortgage, pay the employees, right? And so we do the things that we get paid for. So what I'm trying to do with this book and the things that are growing out of it is to get those guys, the financial advisors and the lawyers, to sit down together and say, how is it that we can exponentially enhance the experience our clients are having with us by synergizing and integrating the financial conversation, bringing about financial security for ourselves and then leaving financial security to heirs? How can we do that in a way that protects the heirs, so that you get all of the upside, all of the good stuff that comes from being able to leave financial security to heirs? And there are a lot of good things from that, right? I mean, leaving money to people is a good thing because they're able to travel, they're able to be educated in ways they wouldn't, they're able to have more stable marriages because you don't have financial pressure in the household. But the other issue, and this is something that you see particularly when you talk to financial advisors that represent truly wealthy people, there is a fear that wealth has the power to destroy human beings. And you see that. You see, and we've seen it. I've certainly seen it, where people that inherit significant amounts of money, all of a sudden now they don't need to have a day job, right? And so they can quit work. They can develop drug addictions, alcohol addictions. They can, they attract a whole different group of friends who are
leech.
Exactly. And it destroys self-esteem because it also destroys trust, because the people that I'm describing who fit in that category are never really quite sure if the people who are their friends are really their friends, or just there to get the financial benefit of hanging around. And so that whole conversation is what I believe lawyers and financial advisors need to be having together with clients, because there are some really incredible power tools that can be installed. There's not one single silver bullet, but I'm saying there are a combination of power tools that can be installed in a plan that allows you to get all the best parts of financial security while also truly empowering the lives of the people you care about.
So let's take a walk through some of the positive stuff that someone could be doing today. My community loves action items. A number of people that have come on here and share the action items, they tend to be the ones that get the most response from my community. So if I wanted to say, let's create a solid financial plan for somebody in our community, what typically are the people that are coming to you looking for, or maybe the people that are in your network? And what are some of the steps that they can use to create a solid financial plan?
So I look at it as a pyramid. In my book, I talk about the pyramid because I believe you got to build the foundation first before you can put the bricks up higher, right? So I think at a foundational level, you have to have a basic financial plan. I believe you have to have a financial advisor to do that. People that do it themselves, I don't think typically do all that well unless they're obsessed with it, in which case that becomes their sport, their hobby. So having a good financial plan. And then I think the second piece is having a basic legal structure in place that provides the basic protections that you can get with a legal plan, protecting yourself from lawsuits. That's particularly an issue in California, where you guys are rather, I would say, rather litigious out there. Suing people
so.
is sort of a sport.
You think everybody's so laid back and at the beach surfing or something, but that's not the case.
It's not the case. No, it's like, there's still a social stigma in parts of the country about suing people. That's not the case, particularly in California. So you have a plan in place that protects you from the risk of that. And then you have a plan in place that builds a kind of a wall around an inheritance so that if you have immature children, the assets in that plan are wisely invested by people that know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The inheritance that you leave is protected from divorces and lawsuits and bankruptcy. In case they go out and start a restaurant and it doesn't work, they go bankrupt, they're not going to lose their inheritance net. So those are, in my view, like the basic, fundamental, foundational blocking and tackling. And then once you've done that, and once that piece is in place, and by the way, my frustration with our industry is that most financial advisors and estate planning attorneys think that when they get to that point, that's the end of the conversation. But I believe that that's where the really good stuff starts. And that's where we then start having conversations about developing, I guess if I could pick one thing, I would say developing a family generosity plan. One of the things I really encourage clients to do is to sit down with family members and start funding a family charity. And that doesn't even have to be a lot of money, but you can do this with a community foundation. If you have a lot of money, you can do a private family foundation. But I think almost everybody can afford to set up a donor advised fund at a community foundation. And what I like to do is to have the family build a structure that allows the children, as they become teenagers, to become advisors to that fund. I like to have family meetings. I like to build rituals and ceremonies around that. I like to have
great idea,
like a food item that we serve at every meeting, and I like to build, like readings, like a structure, a ritual, a ceremony. If you take a look at all of the organizations in the world that have survived the longest, it's the organizations that have deeply embedded rituals surrounding them. The Jewish tradition has survived all kinds of onslaughts. The Catholic Church has been around for 1,800 years, and I believe it's because you have rituals around that, and people become emotionally connected to that. And I like to have families do that with their family charity, so that it's not just the act of giving money away, but it's the whole togetherness, the reaffirming of the values that family has concluded are important, that really creates the glue that makes that family last. I think people are transformed by the experience of having to think about how to make the world better in ways that cannot personally benefit them.
My 86-year-old Jewish mother would agree with you that nothing sets the tone for a meeting right than brisket and kreplach. I think that would be the way to go.
So that is exactly what I'm talking about. That's the glue. That's the glue that passes values on and passes wisdom on. If you connect it to those things. And I know this sounds.
No, you're right, man. You're right. Nothing says business meeting or financial planning or closeness like a good quiche. And I don't disagree with you. I agree with you. I think the closer that you can get in those meetings, I think about all those kitchen table conversations I had with my kids when my kids were younger. They're a little bit older now and they're out of the home, but those conversations that we have about the importance of establishing good credit. And, I think back to those conversations that we had, and I can hear my kids even today saying those same things that I would say at that kitchen table as we were having a meal. But yeah, just some simple things, just like keeping your credit score above 800 if you can, and having a couple of months of, reserves in the bank. And these are still a lot of the same principles that they have put to play in their, 20 something lives right now. And it is you're 100% right. The impact that meeting makes is essential.
Yeah. So if you think about it for a minute, if you go look at inner cities where you have high crime rates, the guys, the guys that are 18 years old or 16 years old or 22 years old who are committing those crimes never had those conversations with their dad.
Hmm.
They never had those experiences. And so when you take away that kind of structured influence, all hell breaks loose, and there are consequences for that.
Agreed. So, Nice Guy Community, Stan has written a book. It's called Your American Legacy: Powerful Strategies That Instill Lasting Values for Generations. It's available on his website. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for that. So, Stan, let me move over to I'm going to give you a surgical scalpel. I'm giving you a scalpel right now and upgrading or moving you over laterally to another career in the medical world. And there are people in my community that are sick and they need symptoms. They have symptoms. What are the symptoms that people generally are experiencing for them to come to you and say, Dr. Miller, please help me. I have this symptom. Can you fix it with your medicine? What is the medicine that you're using to help people fix the problems that they have? Is it meetings? Is it courses? Is it coaching? How do you get your experience into the hands of people that are, for example, in my community?
That's a great question. And so what I have to do is try on a number of different ideas to see what resonates. So there are any number of things that you can do. One of the things that we do really regularly is when people come to see us to have their estate plan created, we, after we do all the required legal documents, the trust and the wills and so forth, then we go a step beyond that to have them create what we call a trustee's letter, where they, in their own words, just say what's in their heart and they express their aspirations for what they want to see happen to the next generation after they're gone, so that
Mhm.
whoever the trustee is that's in charge of managing the money has the benefit, the insight of being able to read that letter before they make distributions. Similar to that is an ethical will, where people just say to their family, this is what I've learned in my life. This is what matters. This is what I hope you will consider to be important. We go beyond that. We have a number of clients that really believe they have a story to tell. They believe they've had struggles, they've had successes, they've had failures, and they don't want to see that wasted. I have a client I've worked with who went through a number of years where he had a really, really serious bout with alcohol and drug addiction. And thankfully, he took action steps and eventually he recovered from that. But he believes that his family is probably genetically predispositioned to have
Mhm.
those similar experiences. And so he's doing all these things now to document and share his story about the experience of being on the dark side of that, with the idea that his family members can connect with his story and hopefully avoid the destructive behavior that he went through. So there are a lot of ways that you can document stories. I've got some resources out there that I use frequently. Guys that will come sit down with you and spend a few days and record a conversation with you and turn that into a book.
Mhm.
So you're able to kind of shape and organize and distill your wisdom, your insight. We've got some resources of people that will come sit down with you with a video camera and do an interview and ask leading questions like you're doing with me and get these people to recount experiences from their younger days. Who were the people that influenced them? Where did their values come from? What did they learn from their parents or grandparents? What did they learn that was positive from their parents or grandparents? What did they learn that was negative? What is it they saw their parents or some uncle do that was obviously uh, not effective? It resulted in this guy having a miserable life. What are the life lessons that you take away from bad experiences? One of the things that we've learned is that even with younger children, Emory University did a study a few years ago, and what they learned is that the single best predictor of emotional stability in children is a knowledge of family history, which my wife found that research, and I was really quite struck by that just knowing where the heck you came from, knowing the names of your grandparents and knowing some things about them changes who you are.
Hmm. Very interesting. I thought about that as I was being shown my family tree. Unfortunately, my brother passed away about a year or so ago, and at the what we call the Shiva house, where people come and visit, a
Yeah.
cousin of mine who I haven't met in decades brought along with him the family tree, and it was amazing to go back all of these generations. And you're 100% right. Your wife is very smart. Well, she for a couple of reasons. Number one, she let you, out of the house every once in a while, which is good. But for also
Yeah.
sharing that research information, it is so true about the value and your pride. Your pride really does take a big boost when you get to know what has happened in your lineage. I love it. So great advice.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was in a Japanese household one time, and they have this book, and this is really common. And with great reverence, this woman opens up the book, and she shows me the names and notes about 22 generations of
Mhm.
family members.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, my dad wrote a book in his day in the mid nine. Let's see, it was the early '90s. He wrote a book called "You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar," and it was all about the practical application of his experience as a sales trainer.
Yeah, right.
How to do things. I wrote a book several years ago called "Nice Guys Finish First," and it really is. There's a lot of my stories that are interweaved through, and it is great to look back on those stories and think about all of the great times that we've had building our business and building our experience. Hey, and just in reading one of the reviews about Stan's book, it was from Sandra T. Author Stan Miller does an excellent job reminding us truly what it is like to live in such a wonderful country. We as Americans have so much. I'm getting to that place of gratitude karma. Will help you to understand that your legacy is far more than just money, and that's exactly what we were talking about. It really does go far beyond just understanding what money is and what it can do for you. So, Stan, I so very much appreciate your message. Let me see if we can give some wise words of wisdom. Actually, I want to ask you one more question because this was one that really stood out as I was doing some research and taking notes. How do you make your funeral a teaching moment? So I'm really curious what the answer to that is, because I'm assuming, do you have an answer to that locked and loaded? Because that's a very unusual question.
So, if you think about it, you have friends and family, and when you die, uh, you've got there's at least an hour there where you have their undivided attention, and you can
You're
and you can
right.
say whatever you want to say, right? So
Yeah.
whatever the message is that matters to you, you have their attention, and it's not just that hour of the funeral ceremony. There's the whole few days after you've been very ill, and then you die, and then there's the preparation for the funeral. There's all that surrounds that. It was interesting, when Pope John Paul II was about to die, and everybody understood that he was, the Catholic Church actually used his uh, his passing, the awareness that he was going to die, as a teaching moment to show Catholics how Catholic doctrine applied in that context. But in evangelical communities, it's very common for people to use their funeral as a moment to clearly articulate their Christian faith, and to actually express their desire. People pre-plan this. They actually plan it so that somebody who's presenting, the preacher or somebody doing as part of the service, actually makes the point that this is something that mattered to this person, and they invite people in the audience to actually share in that with them. So there are a lot of ways you can do that. Baby boomers, by the way, are dying much more creatively than people before. There are a lot of people now who aren't having funerals. They're postponing it so they can have a celebration of life ceremony 2 or 3 months.
Mhm.
That's happening all the time right now, because like right now nobody can go to a funeral, right? If you have
Right,
anybody
right.
dies, that's going to be on ice for a while. And so there's a lot of thought going into how can we make our passing an opportunity to teach people that are important to us the things that matter. And there are a lot of creative opportunities there.
At this point, I think I'm going to have to go with a podcast mic in my casket with me. I'm not 100% sure what else I could do. So I'm ready. I told my kids already, I said, I want you to, with some of the insurance money that's going to be in their hands, I want to fund a trip so that my son can, I'm a big fly fisherman, so that my son can actually spread my ashes on 3 rivers, one in Alaska, one in Montana, and one in Connecticut. And take the time to actually enjoy a couple of weeks on me to be able to do that. I don't want him being sad. I want this to be a celebration of my life, just as you say. So that is one of the things that I really want to share with my son, who I think would do a great job with it. Pretty interesting.
So, and let me say, when you talk about travel, just quickly, I will tell you that travel has been a huge deal with us. I have a chapter about travel in my book. Travel has actually been one of the really powerful legacy tools that I've incorporated in my own family. As each of my sons reached the age of 15-ish or so, I took each one on a trip anywhere in the world they wanted to go. It was 3 weekends and 2 full weeks, and it was just me and him. We just did our stuff. And so, I know for a fact that we did things that had a permanent and lasting impact on their life, and that would not have happened but for the fact that we did that father-son experience.
Agreed.
So travel is actually, is one of the legacy tools I recommend.
What a great piece of advice. I'm sure a great book. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. I might have to hit you up for a signed copy directly from you. Very rare that I'm bold enough to ask that while I'm recording, but I may as well do that, because now I put you in a position to only be able to say yes to me.
No worries. I'm flattered, honored.
I would be happy to receive and use it as a part of my teachings for my kids, even though they're in their 20s. It would be great to share, and I'm sure I have plenty to learn also. Let's give our community one final bit of advice. I want to leave the last thought here on you, and share whatever level of expertise that you have. If you could boil it down into maybe 20 or 30 seconds of advice to my community, this is your chance to do it.
Well, let me say this. Notwithstanding the recent downturn in the stock market, over the next 25 years or so, there's going to be about 60 or 70 trillion dollars pass hands from the people that earned it into the hands of people who didn't. If we don't get this right, it's a train wreck. If we do get this right, think about what could happen when responsible people who are good stewards of resources get that kind of wealth, and what kind of difference they can make in the world.
Very good. Excellent advice. Thank you for sharing. Stan Miller, thanks for being on the show today, and thanks for sharing everything that you're all about. Your message and your inspiration are inspirational to my community and to me as well. So thanks for being here, Stan, on the show.
Great. Thanks, Doug.
Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Stan Miller. All of his information, including access to his website, where you can find out more about him, about the services that he provides, and the book that he is sharing with you today, will be right there in the show notes. So go ahead over to that link, click the link, and then you can check out a copy of his book. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Fill up your week with the Nice Guys. Haven't they run out of people willing to talk to them yet?